Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really cool story from the book of 2 Kings. It's all about leadership, faith, and a huge rebuilding project. We get to see how a really young king managed to completely revitalize a nation.
So, here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to follow the story of King Joash pretty much verse by verse. We'll track his journey from being just a kid on the throne all the way to becoming the leader who pulled off this amazing restoration of the temple in Jerusalem.
All right, so to get our bearings, let's picture this. We're in Jerusalem, way back around 835 BC. The kingdom of Judah has just gone through some seriously chaotic times. And right in the middle of all this, a little boy becomes king. You can just feel that this is going to set the stage for something pretty remarkable.
Okay, let's jump into our first section. This is where we meet the main characters and see how the groundwork was laid for what turned out to be a 40-year reign.
And right off the bat, verse 1 hits us with something pretty astonishing. Joash was only 7 years old when he became king. I mean, can you imagine? His survival alone and then his rise to power was seen as this incredible act of God, making sure that the royal line of David wasn't broken.
The verse also points out that he reigned for 40 years. Now, in the Bible, that number 40 is a big deal. It often means a complete generation or a really significant time of testing and then stability. So for Joash, it signals this long, stable period, which was a huge sign that God's promises were on track. And that little detail about his mom being from Beersheba, that's not just trivia. It was actually a big deal, pointing to strong political connections in the South.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. Verse 2 gives us this super explicit link. It says that Joash's success, his ability to do what was right, wasn't just because he was a good guy. Nope. It was directly tied to the influence of one specific person, Jehoiada the priest. And this really sets up a huge theme for the whole story, the idea of prophetic guidance. It's this principle that a leader, especially a young one like Joash, can really lead a nation well when they have a mentor who's, grounded in God's wisdom. And this guidance wasn't just spiritual pep talks. Verse 3 shows it was super practical. Jehoiada actually arranged marriages for the king. And he wasn't just playing matchmaker here. He was securing the future of the entire royal line. It was like a living, breathing symbol that God's promises were still in play. All right, so let's move on. We've seen the setup. Now let's see how this all translated into action. In verses 4 and 5, the focus kind of zooms out from the king himself to this massive national project he gets started. So in verse 4, Joash kicks off this big plan to restore the temple, which had really fallen apart. But check this out. The qualification for the workers wasn't just about being a good carpenter. They had to be wise-hearted. That's so important. It taps into this bigger idea in the Bible that your skill, your craft, can be a form of worship. It meant this wasn't just a construction job. It was sacred work that needed a sacred mindset. And then verse 5 shows us the amazing ripple effect of this kind of leadership. Because the king was leading the way, the people jumped right in. The text makes it really clear that they gave willingly. It wasn't a tax. It was a genuine, voluntary outpouring that showed they were also renewing their own commitment. So how do you organize a nationwide fundraising campaign like this? Well, verses 6 through 8 lay it all out. And it wasn't some messy, chaotic thing. It was actually a really simple, super effective, and totally transparent system. Here's the genius of it. First, they built a chest and put it right out in the open, at the temple gate, where everybody could see it. Then, they sent out a proclamation all over the kingdom. And the result? People were excited. The leaders, the regular folks, they all came and willingly filled that chest up until it was literally overflowing. I mean, this system was just brilliant, right? By putting the chest out there in public, it created total transparency and accountability. It was about way more than just collecting funds. It was about building trust and getting the whole community fired up to be part of this huge, shared spiritual goal. Okay, so the money's been raised. Now what? The project moves into its next phase, which we see in verses 9 through 12. And this part is all about smart management, skilled workers, and just being really good stewards of what they'd been given. The text is actually super specific about how the money was handled. In verses 11 and 12, it says the king's own people counted it, and then they paid the money directly to the workers, carpenters, builders, masons. It also went to buy materials like timber and stone. It just shows this incredible level of organization and responsibility. They were taking the people's offerings seriously. And the result of all this teamwork, the king, the priest, the people, all working together,
It was a total success. They worked hard, got the job done, and restored the temple back to its former glory. What a powerful symbol of the whole nation being renewed. So, what's the big lesson here? What's the point of this whole story? Well, the final verses 13 through 16 make the connection absolutely crystal clear. The crucial point is that the story comes full circle. The temple was restored, the nation prospered, and the king was blessed. Why? The text says it was because he faithfully followed the guidance from Jehoiada the priest. His obedience was the key that unlocked the whole thing. So what we have here is just this powerful example of what can happen when leadership, community, and faith all line up. It really shows you that having wise guidance is essential. Getting the community on board is a game changer, and that one faithful leader can truly inspire a whole nation. And that leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? This ancient project was built on transparency, community buy-in, and a shared purpose. So it kind of makes you step back and ask, what do our own community projects today say about us? The way we organize them, the way we fund them, what do they reveal about what our society truly values?